Okay, I think we are ready to start. As you can see here, our topic for our discussion today is fostering economic relations across the island. What we will be doing today is that we will start with some introductions about who we are here with you today. Then, given my background as a social psychologist, and given that a lot of the research that we have been doing in the last 20 years in the University of Cyprus relates to the issue of crossing between the two sides and people-to-people contacts and the role of contact in reducing prejudice and building trust between the two communities, I will give some background from my social psychological perspective with the wish somehow to create some fertilization between the economics and social psychology and see what we have to gain from each perspective. Then we will turn to our guests and discuss the Green Line regulation, its implementation, its challenges, but also the opportunities ahead of us. And in the end, we will also have some time, about 10 minutes, to take some questions from you, the audience. So let's start with introductions. I have here with me, on the right-hand side, Andreou. He's the Director of Industrial Development, Innovation and Environment in the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry. On my left is Mustafa Ergüven. He's the Deputy Secretary General of the Turkish Cypriot Chamber of Commerce. And here on my right is Stefan Simosas, the Head of Cooperation, Cyprus Settlement Support Unit, Directorate General for Structural Reform, Support, DG Reform. So, as you will see, this panel is a bit interdisciplinary in its nature. So as I said earlier, I will start with some background in terms of the social psychological perspective, and then we will introduce the trade perspective across the island. As I said earlier, this comes from a research program that started in the University of Cyprus since 2007. So it's almost 2 decades of data collection across the divide in both communities, and most of the research we do at the University Center for Field Studies is comparative in nature, collecting representative sample surveys from both communities, trying to understand how each community views the other community, the role of contact after the opening of the checkpoints in prejudice reduction, stereotypes, prejudice, the building of trust, narrations about history teaching, and the role of education in the Cyprus issue. But we are not going to discuss all of this today. We're actually focusing on a minor part of this research program, which is the crossing of people and people-to-people contacts and the role that has in prejudice reduction throughout the years. I think that's a nice background for our discussion about the Green Line regulation later on. So this is some information I gathered from various sources, also the annual reports of the European Commission on the implementation of the Green Line regulation. There's an interesting pattern here. If you look at the crossings since 2003, when we had the opening of the checkpoints, despite some kind of reduction around the years of 2012-13, after that there was a steady increase of people crossing from each side, with the exception, of course, of the COVID crisis, when we had a significant drop because of the closing of the checkpoints for a couple of years. But other than that, if you might notice something very interesting there, is that just before the closing of the checkpoints, there was a significant increase in the number of people crossing. And once the checkpoints were reopened, there was again this significant increase. Actually, if you compare crossings just before the closing of the checkpoints and just after the opening of the checkpoints, due to COVID, you will see that there is actually a 2 or 3 times twofold increase in crossings. And you can break that down according to the annual reports of the Commission in crossings by Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. There is a similar pattern. What I find interesting is actually in the last 3-4 years after COVID, there is a reversal of the number of crossings, with more Greek Cypriots now crossing compared to the past. So there's something there which is very interesting, because as we will see later on, there's a lot of discussion about the psychological barriers in trading, and given this positive shift that we now see in the last 3-4 years, I think that will have a significant positive impact also on trade in the near future. This is also about the trade. Again, data gleaned from the annual reports of the Commission. You see that, again, a similar pattern in terms of trade at the far end in the last 3-4 years. Again, a steady increase in the volume of trade, which goes hand in hand, it seems, with the number of crossings. Now, the current statistics about the frequency of crossing are also interesting. I won't go into the detail of the text here, because I have a table which I think is very telling, actually. So this is a kind of question we always ask: how often do you cross to the other side? And what you see here is that there is a significant percentage in the Greek Cypriot community, about 1/4, that say that I visited only once and I will not visit again. So that's indicative of that psychological barrier, which is more indicative of the Greek Cypriot community here, but that's much less in the Turkish Cypriot community. Then you have, again, about 1/3 that says I visited a few times and I will not visit again. That's also, if you add these people together, it's actually about half of the population that, you know, are very reluctant to cross. But then you can add the rest of it, and you realize that there is about 1/3 and even 40% that cross with some regularity in the Greek Cypriot community. Now, in the Turkish Cypriot community, you will see a different pattern. The majority of Turkish Cypriots cross to the south with some regularity. So that's an interesting pattern there. As I said, we have more than 30 comparative research projects in the university, and we are interested in the work of a very famous social psychologist called Gorton Allport. He was the one who proposed in 1954 the so-called contact hypothesis. Contact hypothesis is actually at the basis of the EU Commission. You might correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel that the idea of the green line regulation and the people-to-people contacts actually is based on the idea of that through contact, people can reduce their prejudices and build trust to each other. Absolutely. So that was in the 1954, it was proposed like that. And since then, there were about, in 2006, about 500 studies around the world that tried to test this hypothesis from Pettigrew and Troop, and we found very strong evidence in 95% of the studies of indeed contact leading to the reduction of prejudice. Until 2006, unfortunately, there was no research from Cyprus. But from 2006 until today, we have more than 30 research projects, so we had the chance to test this hypothesis also in Cyprus. And what we found, and I'm finishing with this is a kind of meta-regression of meta-analysis. Every dot you see is the effect size of contact in relation to positive feelings. So if you take the mean of all these studies, the effect size is 0.37, 0.38, which is almost double the effect size that Pettigrew and Trop found in their meta-analysis of the effect in any other part of the world. So what does that tell you? It tells you that in Cyprus, not only contact works, but it works twice as better as in any other part of the world. So one might ask, okay, why is this happening? Well, the answer I usually give is that in Cyprus, because of the full geographical separation with two different educational systems, it is very easy to create negative stereotypes due to the lack of contact. So by just meeting another person, let's say in the home for cooperation, or because they cross to trade or to do business or whatever, a lot of this image of the demonized other is actually deconstructed immediately. So I think that's very good. We have seen the results of that prejudice reduction in research tracking the trends in that reduction. What you see there as a green line is positive feelings. What you see as a red line is towards Turkish Cypriots. So in other words, you can see the positive effects of contact. And then we go to Turkish Cypriots, and you see a very similar pattern. A very clear reduction of negative feelings towards the Greek Cypriot community. So, something final but very important. There is also a generational effect, which I think will also lead to some positive predictions and projections in the near future. Because what you see there is how positive or negative the feelings are for the other community, depending on when people were born. So it's like generational differences. And what you see on the far left here is that these are the very old people, born 1930, 35, and you see a big gap there. So if you are a Turkish Cypriot of an old age, you tend to be very positive towards Turkish Cypriots. But if you are a Turkish Cypriot of an old age, you tend to be quite negative for Greek Cypriots. But what do you see here? We see that as new generations come in, the two lines converge into something close to the middle. So the interpretation of that is that I think the big narratives, of the big nationalist narratives are actually fading out through the years, and new generations are not trapped in these narratives. So we have better chances of, becoming more realistic about each other, I think, in the new generations. So I leave it to here about this social psychological perspective. But I think now it's important to move on to the other dimension of the Green Line regulation, which was the, trading, business. So,
before going into trading, Charis, let me verify what you said right now. I have to admit that personally I had some psychological barriers with the Turkish Cypriot community, not because I had it. I cannot find a solution about it or why I had it. I'm working with my colleagues from the Turkish Chamber of Commerce for 5 years now, and I can clearly understand that I don't have any psychological barriers. And I consider Mustafa or Kemal from the One Stop Shop or any other guy that I work with, not only as a colleague, but as a friend as well. So I hope Mustafa feels the same.
Yes, of course. Great. So, Stefan, maybe you could give us a background about what is the Green Line regulation, the history of it, and how it works, challenges, opportunities.
Sure. Yes, and thanks, of course, to the organizers first for inviting us here as well to discuss this very important topic. I think you all know that the European Union is very actively present here, and we as the European Commission is also here to support a settlement of this very long-standing problem. We have been discussing that in other aspects today as well. So that has to really be said from the beginning, that the overall goal is to really find a solution, reunification of the island. And I think how we then do it, of course, we have some instruments that are available for us for that, and of course then the Green Line regulation is one of those. The Green Line regulation, if I want to give a bit of a history to this, is that we have all to admit that this was, of course, put together rather hastily, because it was then adopted just after the negative outcome of the unplanned referendum, but before the Republic of Cyprus joined the European Union. So I think it came into force on the 1st of May 2004. And as has been said, so the Green Line regulation regulates basically the crossing of people, and the second aspect then that is kind of more detailed in the regulation as well then is the crossing of goods. And I think also what is important to state here, I think Mustafa and Andreas know that this is basically, the Green Line trade is basically trade from the north to the south, if I may use those words. And I think that's basically the basis of it, really, that what the Green Line regulation is about, that to really support interactions between the communities, to really have also integration also of the economies through trade. I think these are really the ideas behind it. We also see it as a confidence building measure between the communities as well. I think that's basically what it should all be about. And has it been successful? I think you mentioned the crossings of peoples. I think the statistics that we have looked into, I think for 23 we were up to 64 million crossings, I think, until the end of 23. So you have that freedom of movement for what can one say, a majority of the people living in Cyprus. So there is more interaction, and I think we agree with you completely that the more interaction there is between the communities, of course, the better that is for a solution. So I think that part is definitely, I think, a success, I would say. I think now, I think for most people it is a normal thing to cross. I think you don't really think about it. Of course, it's still a little bit of a hassle because you have to show your IDs, and these days the queues are unfortunately very long if you go by car. So there are, of course, issues that needs to be looked at and hopefully improved. The trade, though, I think also has been a success, I say, but I think there are definitely, I think, more challenges also with trade. We as the European Union are very clear here that, the trade that happens has to be, in line with the EU standards. So we say it's basically standards for trade for standards. We think also then that this type of trade, basically legal trade, is also very important because also it reduces smuggling that unfortunately is also still very pertinent, very much present, but that's one thing. Last year, I think we had the Green Line trade was 16 million euros, and I think there has been, I think you also showed on your graph, an increase in the couple of years, and in the couple of last years, and especially after the COVID pandemic. So that is, of course, a good thing. It looks good, especially if you look at this in terms of percentages. But again, if you really see that, is 16 million really that much? If you look at this from a longer perspective, if the economists can say that this is a good figure with 20 years of implementation, I think that's a very good question to make. And I think also all these things that we cannot take for a given. I think that the graphs always keep increasing. I think it's something that we cannot really take as a given, because I understand that this year we may have a reduction of the Green Line trade, and I think we also do have a reduction of crossings of people. So what I'm trying to say here as well is that if we want to move forward, I think that needs to be sustained by political and other type of support as well. It's not self-evident that we are always looking for improvements here. It has to be supported basically by the political elites and of course economic operators if you talk about trade and others too. So I think that's a very important aspect. I also want to say a little bit what we do more. So of course the second kind of main instrument we have. So I think what we can say also about the Green Line, the final sentence is that this is something that the European Commission and then in our case DG Reform. So we are like overseeing the implementation of it, and I think you referred also to the annual reports that we do regularly. Then so how we support Green Line trade I think is also important, and of course I have to say in the beginning that we very much also rely on the support from the two chambers here, and I think that's really key, and I think we are very pleased that the chambers first of all are sitting in the same room and that the cooperation is good. I think there is never any question about that, and I think this is of course very, very essential for getting things done. And also through the chambers and and together with the chambers, I mean, what the one-stop shop was mentioned already, Kemal is here. I think this is one of the Commission projects as well, that we try really with a more of a hands-on approach to support Green Line trade as well, so that traders, buyers, sellers can actually have somebody to contact when there is a challenge, and there are challenges, you know, that we are and Kemal and his colleagues are dealing with on a daily basis. So we are also trying that approach. We have also, of course, other mechanisms as well to support it, and I think the chambers also have been dealing with many other issues in the past. But we have also quite extensive support to the business sectors, for example. So I think, you know, since 2006, since the beginning of the age regulation for the Turkish Cypriot community, I think we have spent around 55 million in supporting businesses. And I think what this mostly is about really is to improve the standards of these businesses so that they can trade, so that they come up to EU standards and have the same kind of level playing field as their colleagues in the south. We have also supported, of course, you know, issues like innovation and digitalization, something that really I think would also support the socio-economic development in the north, so that on the day also of reunification that the gap is not enormous, so that the two communities are basically as close to each other as possible. I think in that same context as well, I mean, this is more of a specific sector. We have also, as you know, supported the implementation of the Halumi Helim PDO scheme, which is also very important because Halumi Helim has a very big potential, economic potential for both communities, and I think we should never forget that this is a really shared heritage of the island. So we have also invested quite a lot really into businesses here and producers, farmers, so that they can achieve those EU standards. We are then dealing also with basically animal health and other issues, so that this trade of also Turkish Cypriot Helim can be sold into the EU market as soon as possible. I think this is a bit like EU jargon now, but what we try to do also with this specific sector is that we have basically unsuspended the suspension of the acquis in the north, and that is of course a big challenge, because this is a new territory. It's a lot of work, but I think the reward will also hopefully be there. And then also to support more concretely Green Line trade as well, that, you know, we are doing. One can a little bit say that not substituting for an authority, but we are doing also tasks that authorities do in countries, such as really doing the hygiene checks and inspections, then also of goods that are traded over the Green Line. So I think that's basically what we do in a kind of a short description. I think, so you know, one can really see then with the 20-year implementation of the Green Line trade, where are we now compared to 2004? Of course, there has been significant progress. We have to really take that into account. But I think it's like equally important to have in mind that there is so much more that can be done. I think that this really, if you see it as a kind of tool to really further integrate economies, to really have better business relations between the communities, to really also use this as an effective political tool, effective confidence building tool. There is really much more that can be done in that respect, because if you look at the overall Green Line trade, I think Kemal, you know this better, but I think 16 million is basically around a little bit more than 1 promille of all the imports of Cyprus per year. So, you know, it cannot really be a kind of a competitor to I would say, any business in the Greek Cypriot community. So I think we would need more political support. We would need more kind of, you know, concrete really measures also from both communities, so that green line trade could really be the kind of success that it has all, I think, the potential to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Mustafa, I understand there's also a mirror regulation.
Yes.
Maybe you could say a few things about this first, and then if you could share your experience as the Turkish Cypriot Chamber of Commerce in terms of challenges and opportunities.
Yes. Thank you very much for both introductions, which were very productive, I believe. But I will try to make a shorter introduction and leave my opportunities issues for the second round. Mm-hmm. First of all, I am honored to be here as a speaker, and I wish at the end of this panel discussion we will manage to leave a productive and attractive and promising message to the audience and to the business communities to build up our motivation and commitment for collaboration and work together to increase the trade and business cooperations between the communities across the divide. Already my colleague Andreas left a message, which was a very good message, I believe. I noted it down. So, as many of you know, Green Line regulation was one of the three legislations that was promised by European community to Turkish Cypriot community during and after an unplanned period, referendum period, in return of their favorable vote, together with two other legislations. One of them was financial aid regulation, which was adopted afterwards, and which is still in force and being implemented by our colleagues in European Commission with our partnership, with a limited budget. Besides that, the third regulation was direct trade regulation. I must also mention this because it is also related with the integration of Turkish Cypriot community, business community with European business community. Unfortunately, this regulation was a promise and was not kept for 20 years and is still waiting as suspended in European Council. We have been always delivering this message to European community, and I would like to use this opportunity to mention again that this was a missed opportunity to integrate the Turkish Cypriot economy with European economy. But I will keep this beside and let us focus on Green Line regulation for what we have in hand at the moment. And Green Line regulation was adopted, as Stefan said, 2 days before the accession of Cyprus into European Union as Greek Cypriot representation unilaterally, actually, and it regulates the crossings of persons in both destinations, as you mentioned, but it regulates only the trade of goods and services on the southbound destination. So it is a one-way trade regulation, we can say that, and subsequently our authorities in the north, they put in force another regulation under a local legislation, which was enabling the Greek Cypriot products, which are produced in the south, to be traded across the divide to the northern part of Cyprus, with the same conditions as per Green Line regulation, with the same criteria and under the same scope, using the same mechanism as we are doing in Green Line regulation as chamber, and like a mirror implementation, as you said. So in the north, we are issuing accompanying document to enable this trade to the south. In the south, it is the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry issuing accompanying document to enable this trade to the north. And we are always in contact with the chambers between each other to a better business atmosphere, and whenever any problem arises, we are always at our disposal, respectively. And also, one-stop shop is a very important point in this aspect as well. Well, there are lots of challenges, obstacles, problems arising every day. When I see Kemal in front of me, I remember the challenges and I don't want to look there. So, but after this introduction in my second round, rather than losing ourselves in obstacles, problems, and challenges, I will try to focus on the opportunities that we have at the moment in our hands and that we have for the future. There are promising sectors, and I will try to describe you the volume of trade at the moment and the other promising sectors in my second round. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mustafa. Andreas?
Okay, thank you for the invitation. I thank the organizers as well. I will try to elaborate a bit on the role of the two chambers as far as fostering economic trade and what is the reason behind green line regulation. So the chambers basically they have the most important role in as far as green line regulation. They are the ones that they promote dialogue and trust. We often organize networking events and workshops where we bring the two communities together. And as your introduction was very valid, if you bring people together, they can discuss issues outside of politics and all other related to politics issues, and maybe find solutions easier than politicians. So the first thing we do is promote dialogue and trust. We facilitate trade through issuing the accompanying documents. Accompanying documents are the necessary documents that have to go with the goods that are passing through green line regulations. So for a product to pass either way from south to north or from north to south, it has to have an accompanying document, and these documents are issued by the chambers. We try to solve obstacles and barriers. I now feel confident that every time I call Mustafa or Kemal at the one-stop shop, that they will do what they can in order to find a solution for a problem, for a product, for a businessman to trade with the other side. We act, both chambers, as facilitators of other EU initiatives like the one-stop shop. We both chambers participate in the advisory committee. And we also have the responsibility for stating down numbers and reporting and monitoring the number of goods and the types of goods passing through green line.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. Well, I guess earlier there was also some discussion about challenges. So I was wondering, maybe we could also identify a few challenges, but also how we see an opportunity to overcome these challenges, or maybe some ideas for policy changes that could facilitate these problems. So if you want to continue, and then we can turn to Stefan and Mustafa.
I will continue because green line trade is very important for both communities. The first thing it does is it eliminates negative feelings and barriers. So if we continue on trading between each other on equal rules, then I think things will be much easier in everything we do. There are a lot of challenges and a lot of barriers and a lot of opportunities ahead of us. We have many regulations, legal requirements, and a lot of bureaucracy and documentation that we have to solve in this process. So we have to focus on minimizing all this and focusing also on how we evolve more opportunities. I see opportunities in digitalization. There are many opportunities for cooperation in information technology and other technological aspects. I see opportunities in making joint ventures for organizations among the two for both communities. So joint ventures will allow access to a much larger market, the European market or the whole world, with more, let's say, abilities to have success. And I also foresee huge issues with green and digital transition, especially at the green aspect of it. There are many environmental restrictions and many environmental regulations coming in place that all of us have to comply with it. And there are many issues related to energy as well. So all joint efforts in minimizing electricity costs would be for the benefit of both communities on the island. And I think there are many opportunities, and I will leave some space for Mustafa to elaborate a bit more.
Okay. Mustafa, you want to go now, or should we turn to Stefan?
It's up to you. Stefan?
No, okay, I can build on what Andreas said. Of course, I full agreement there. But I think if you really look at the challenges, I mean, challenges for green line trade are not very different from, I think, the overall challenges on the island as well. I think, they, not that they maybe go really hand in hand, but, they are, of course, very much interlinked. So I think what we would really need to have basically is a full political commitment to start with, that green line trade is basically good for everybody, to try to really also reduce the kind of barriers, to kind of get rid of the psychological barriers that still do exist. So it's not only for, I think, the crossings that is valid, it is basically also for traders. They have the same challenges, and of course then the acceptability of for example, Turkish Cypriot products on shelves in supermarkets in the south. There are issues still that one can really improve a lot when you talk about the psychological barriers as well. I think that is I think an important aspect that really would help also if the political support would be there to push this file. I think also for traders in particular, and I think the chambers are of course much better placed to reply to that, to say that, but I think what we also would, I think, really benefit from, or the traders would benefit from, is that if we would have a kind of a very predictable trade as well, so that the rules have to be very clear. When rules change, they also have to be communicated effectively. These are kind of more technical issues, but they do affect trade. And to really have, make the trade basically as smooth as one can. Also, of course, one important aspect is really, the standards. So we as the European Commission, we are very clear that, there can be no trade into the EU market, of course, if products are not fulfilling the EU standards. And I think the Turkish Cypriot community has come a long way there, but clearly I think this is something that work needs to go on. And of course also, as Andreas said, going beyond the green line trade as well. I mean, it's very important that businesses in the north as well take these EU developments into account when they also plan for the future, because that is of course a huge area. And of course, to really have that kind of legal predictability behind it as well. So I think those maybe would be the challenges. And I think in the future, of course, I think it's always important to think about outside the box and look at really what can be done differently as well. And I think, Andreas, you mentioned some of them which are very, very important. So I think if you really look at the kind of services, cooperation as well, and digitalization, why not? And of course, to really also have, cross green line cooperation on issues where goods do not necessarily have to cross the green line. I think these are all issues that can be looked at. So, the more I think economic integration, the more kind of cooperation that there are between businesses, no matter really what the product or issue the company deals with, I think the better it would be also for the settlement process.
Thank you, Stefan. I think what you said there about political will is actually crucial also from a social psychological perspective. Remember earlier when I said about this contact hypothesis from Allport, he actually, in his original theorization, he said there needs to be 4 conditions met in order for contact to have the beneficial effects of prejudice reduction. And one of his proposals was you need support by authorities and norms, in-group norms. So, the feeling that what I'm doing, having contact, creating friendships, is supported by my group, by the norms, by my leadership. So now thinking about this, I'm trying to think whether the leaders of the 2 communities ever went out publicly and say, we encourage you to talk to the public like that. We encourage you to start trading, and I'm not sure I can find an example of that. Anyway, Mustafa?
Yes, I will try to avoid involving politics, but I will have a comment on that. Okay. I changed my speech because there are very good remarks coming from there, so I will come from another perspective now. You mentioned in your presentation as well and during your speech about the positive effect of contact. And we should know that the best way to have the contact is the economical approach, as you said. When we are focusing on the figures of trade and crossings, we are seeing a significant increase, not after COVID. We should concentrate on the exact starting date of the increasing of crossing points and the trade volumes. It started in 2018 with the devaluation of Turkish lira. The people started going to the northern part of Cyprus to spend more time, to spend more money, because they were for their benefit, because there were some applicable prices within the Turkish Cypriot community. And also trade has increased due to this understanding with low cost production expenses. So that was one of the reasons. And in 2022, we had 141% increase in the trade volume in green line. This was the biggest factor here. But when we have seen this, the positive effect of contact, yes, it started coming to reverse when the devaluation stopped, and especially the prices in the north started increasing. We have seen the reverse attraction to the southbound from the Turkish Cypriot community. So economy affects everything. This is the best key for bringing people together. Because also I will mention about trade perspective. In trade, we have a seller and buyer. They have benefits between each other. But the benefit of the buyer is the common benefit of the seller because they are winning together. So whenever any problem arises in the Greek Cypriot community, when Turkish Cypriot producer are trying to sell his product, it is the Greek Cypriot buyer also who is dealing with this and trying to achieve and find a solution for this, because they will win together. And this is bringing people, and with this way, the communication is in a better circumstance. I will mention about the opportunities that would arise in the coming days. Now, it depends on the scope of Green Line regulation. It is, to be honest, it is a very limited. It has a very limited scope. It only, especially the animal products, are not allowed to be traded. And we have so many products produced in northern part of Cyprus, which we do have animal products inside it. So that is one of the reasons that we cannot increase the volume, but there is a promising opportunity of Hellim Hallumi, as Stefan mentioned as well. We are hoping to start the first batch of Hellim Hallumi trade within the first months of 2025. My target was 2024, as we are committed to the target defined altogether with the Commission and all other stakeholders, but I believe the beginning of 2025 will be a better expectation. And when this will start, we will have a bigger interaction between the companies, because Hellim Hallumi is the biggest product of both communities on their exports to the third countries. So now we will start trading the Hellim Halloumi between the communities. And the Greek, unfortunately, Turkish Cypriots were far behind the European market in terms of animal products specifically. So we didn't sell any kilo of Hellim Halloumi to European market till now. So we don't know the market. It is the Greek Cypriot traders and producers who are very familiar with that market. So whenever there will be a trade between North and South, I believe this will be benefit for them as well to get a better applicable prices with the Turkish Cypriot production because we have lower costs in the north. And then they may use it as a private label to sell the product to European market where we are not that much strong in finding new customers in European market. So that's a promising opportunity, I believe, with the starting of 2025. In addition to this, I believe joint ventures would be another aspect that we should work on it. Not only under the Green Line regulation and Green Line trade perspective, but also working together and coming together and applying to the tenders together. There are some specific steps that were taken by some companies, and I believe this will grow up in the coming days. And I think that's all I should say for the moment. Yes.
Thank you, Mustafa. Yes.
There is still a very big obstacle and a challenge for both communities, especially for Greek Cypriots to solve. And this is mainly the...
I think the microphone is not working. You are out of battery.
Thank you. Is it okay now?
Not really. Maybe you can.
It's a big obstacle, I understand. That you will say now. It is being prevented.
So I wanted to mention that the biggest barrier that we have to solve is related to banking.
Yes.
Banking is a huge obstacle for now, and it has a huge impact in limiting trade among the two communities. So banking is a very regulated area in Cyprus, especially after 2030 that everybody knows what happened. And banks are very reluctant in, let's say, opening new accounts, even for all citizens of the republic. And so something that we have to solve as chambers and of course as the republic and both communities is the banking issue. If a solution is found in the banking issue, I think trade will increase a lot.
Great. So I think we have about 1 minute or 2 minutes each to make a final statement or state something that we wanted to talk about but we didn't get the chance. Let's start from you, Stefan, and then we can turn to the public.
No, I think we have raised, really most of the issues here now when it comes to this bicommunal business cooperation and the Green Line regulation. But I think maybe just to repeat what was said here at the previous panel, that, success basically is a decision. So I think that's something that stuck in my mind as well. I think we can really make this Green Line trade and increase business cooperation over the divide if we actually decide to do so and everybody works in that direction. And I think that's, of course, all three who are sitting here, I'm sure we are very committed to achieve that goal.
Thank you, Stefan. Mustafa?
Yes, the commitment is very important in this aspect, and we are trying to increase Green Line trade volume in both sides, specifically from south to north as well. That's an important point as well, because we have to win in both sides to be sustainable. And we are trying to get over the challenges on that side as well. And as you said, one of you said that it's only 1% of the trade of Greek Cypriot community is compared with the total imports with the Green Line trade.
One promille.
Yes, yes, exactly. So we tried to increase it a lot, but we came with 150% increase during the last 2 years. But we are not still using the exact potential of Green Line trade. There is a huge capacity and potential under this trade, but we are trying and we are failing. We are trying better and we are failing better. So we will keep trying and we will keep failing better.
Thank you, Mustafa. Andreas, you have the final word before we turn to our audience.
Thank you, Charis. The Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry is dedicated to foster trade among the two communities. So we are here to assist and help in any way we can in order to speed up the process and eliminate all obstacles and barriers. I would say that since we have the University of Cyprus on our part now, we could organize a survey among the business community of Cyprus through the chambers in order to see how the psychological factor affects business decisions and business trade among the two communities.
It's a very good idea. But we are here to help. So now to our audience, it's time for you to, if you have any statements, questions to our panelists here. Yes, Kemal.
Okay, there has been a lot of reference to one-stop shop, but just a couple of remarks. I think it's very important to acknowledge the cooperation of the chambers, how useful it is, especially remembering that the chambers are business organizations that represent their members. And their members come from all backgrounds, political and diverse, right? And despite that, both chambers have decided intentionally to continue this cooperation, despite sometimes there have been issues with their own members. So I think it is very important to show support for the cooperation of this chamber and their decision to continue this, because they see the long-term success and the long-term vision to it. The second remark that I would like to make is that we sometimes forget that we are not living in a normal country, unfortunately. And it's not a trade between two normal, mutually recognizing entities. And this is also making things very difficult. Thanks to the European Commission, who always try to support and come in between. I think it's very important to continue this. I really appreciate Mustafa saying that we need to increase the trade, the reverse trade as well. And given the consequences, it's not always very easy. And the fourth point that I really want to make this discussion is the fact that we also realize how much the Turkish Cypriots are really committing themselves to catch these standards. And the Greek Cypriot community have gone through this, and then after the membership also continue to experience this. For the Turkish Cypriots, they really showed a lot of dedication, and we also see that some of the problems are encountered by this. But there is also some realities that it's easier to make the checks and controls through the Green Line crossing points, which might be even more difficult for the Turkish Cypriots in compared to the other trade. The chambers have produced also remarkable work in the past. They did great awareness campaigns, and I think it's very important for the future to look at the future. I think the dialogue is very important, and I think they need to include other partners as much as within their reach to increase this, because it will be to the benefit of everybody. So thank you very much for this opportunity and for this presentation.
Thank you, Kemal, for these very insightful remarks. I think we have 2-3 minutes. Stalo?
Hello everyone, congratulations. My name is Stefan. I'm a senior officer at the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and also I'm the coordinator of Enterprise Europe Network. It's an initiative by the European Commission to support SMEs, to find partners, the right funding opportunities, and be compliant with the single market regulations. So given that, it's very important, as you said, Stefan, the standardization and the compliance with the regulations. I think the problem comes from the mistrust of the substantial production of products. So if the European Commission find a mechanism to increase the surveillance of this, I think the mistrust between the two communities of businessmen, it will minimize. From my experience as the coordinator of Enterprise Europe Network, receiving complaints, this is the major issue that we are hearing. This is a good opportunity, the Cyprus Forum, which is for policymakers to raise this issue and to give you to pass this message to you coming from the European Commission to find the key to solve this problem. I think this is you understand what I mean? To solve the problem and bring closer the two communities. And also, we need to mention that the cross-border between business and consumers, it's okay. It's the B2B that it needs more support, and we need to enhance the efforts of increasing the transactions between the two communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stalo. If there is no... we have one more question.
Yes, one final question. Good evening, everyone. From the European Commission. I have a question to Mustafa and Andreas. Knowing all the challenges that we have with green line trade, the political will, the standards, predictable trade, etc., I would still like to put it out there that we also have an issue of trust building between businesses. Letting aside all the political issues and all the kind of larger issues. So I would like to have maybe your thoughts on the one thing that we could do to increase trust between businesses. So peer-to-peer businesses. How would you go?
Right.
If I may, thank you for raising this up, Jutta. And I will give you a very important experience that I faced during our Hillim Hallumi working group discussions. Well, the adoption of PDO Hillim Hallumi regulation was done in April 2021. And the first Hillim Hallumi producer got the PDO certification 1.5 years following to this date. And during this time, most of the factories in the Greek Cypriot community, they already received their PDO compliance and certification by Bureau Veritas. And the Turkish Cypriot community was preparing themselves with a long process, inspection process, preparing themselves with the support of European Commission assistance in increasing the standards of the producers and the farms and etc. And we have come a long way, and we prepared ourselves. And it took 1.5 years to arrange everything the inspection body, the language, the inspectors and everything, all the bureaucratic facilities. And it's been 1.5 years after the adoption. But although this, when we informed the Hillim Halimi working group about getting the certification of a Turkish Cypriot Hillim Halimi producer about PDO certification, they said, how come you get this certification and compliance that much early? So this is explaining the mistrust between the companies towards each community. I think we couldn't explain and describe what kind of standardization and increasing the standards in the Turkish Cypriot facilities, in companies, in farms, in producers, food business operators and everything. I think we need to explain to our Greek Cypriot partners that we are also fulfilling the relevant EU regulations and standards and compliances. That was an interesting moment for me. There was already 58 Greek Cypriot Hillim Halimi producers who received the PDO before that date, and when we got it, it's not so early. So that was tragic-comic moment for me, which is describing the mistrust between the companies.
Thank you, Mustafa. Andrea?
This is true. There is somehow a mistrust among competitors in certain areas. The example Mustafa mentioned is distinctive, since halloumi is very important for both communities and everybody's feeling a lot about it, and it's a very important product for the communities all over the island, and everybody has an idea what halloumi is. So if you ask my grandmother, she will say you one thing, and everybody has an idea how halloumi should be made, from what percentage of milk, what temperature, how you should eat it, and all these things. So halloumi is not a very good example. However, I think that if we keep the dialogue and coming and meeting with each other, discussing common problems and issues and challenges, solutions will be found. Definitely there are barriers and psychological barriers among the business community as well. The European Commission should keep an effort in keeping the two communities together on an equal basis, discussing on issues well before the issues come up to the surface in order to build the relevant psychological infrastructure to assist in this. And hopefully at some point politicians will feel the same in order to solve all the issues on the island.
Thank you. And may I add that as social psychologists, we are here to help in trust building, if you need our help. Thank you very much.
Thank you.